Hi, I'm Alex Mitchell and I'm the creator of Cancer Stories. Cancer Stories is a video diary program which is designed to help people like yourself manage their cancer. And the key aim is to record previous patients' experiences, really a wide variety of cancers. And these are patients who are genuine, real patients from Leicestershire who've given their consent to allow us to record their story onto DVD or the internet. What we ask those patients is really to give a brief account over 30 or 60 minutes. How did they manage with their diagnosis? And hopefully by watching their account, you'll be able to pick out some common themes from one or more of those videos. And those common themes might be things like what resources are available locally or nationally, or how do families cope, or how do people themselves manage with those awkward stages, either the initial diagnosis or the complications of treatment, or perhaps psychological and emotional complications, which are sometimes overlooked. So overall, we hope that by watching the video diary program, you'll be able to take some positives from other people's accounts, and hopefully that will help you better cope with your situation, whatever that is at the current time. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name is Christopher Sedman. I was born in Glenparva, Leicester. I'm married to Cath and I have two children, Alison and Andrew. 7.5 years ago, I started getting symptoms and was eventually diagnosed with a brain tumour. I've had it's reoccurred and I've had 2 operations and lots of chemotherapy. And I was asked to come here to provide a film to show patients and clinicians my experience.
So I'm here with Chris Sedman today, and Chris has come in to tell us about his brain tumour diagnosis and also how he was diagnosed and how he got back into life after the tumour. I don't know a great deal about your account because we've only met today, haven't we?
We have.
But it would be useful to hear a little bit about that. But before we launch into that, I wonder if you could give the viewers a little bit of background as to where you grew up and how you came to be in Leicester.
Right. I was born in Glenparva in Leicester, the posh bit, if there is a posh bit. When I was 7, we moved to Thurnby, not the posh bit, too expensive. I went to school, didn't have a very good time at high school, hated it in fact. Left school as early as I could, worked at Woolco. I wanted to be a policeman and I applied when I was 18, got through to the final interview, got turned down. My mum spotted shortly after that adverts in the paper from Leicestershire and started wanting traffic wardens. So I didn't really want to be a traffic warden, but it got me sort of in the clan, so to speak. So I applied for that and I knew I'd get it because I only just got turned down for the police. So I got that. I thought after a year I'll apply for the police again and they'll see that in the night evening they'll see that I'm so good that I'll get in the police, you know. So that's what didn't happen. Applied again in a year, final interview, got turned down again. Cut a long story short, I then had about 8 years as a traffic warden, and by coincidence, a sergeant that was in charge of me said, "Why don't you apply to become a SOCO?" I'd never even known what a SOCO was. So I found out, applied, and there was 3 vacancies, I was the 4th choice. So I was like, again been turned down. But one of those dropped out, decided he didn't want the job, so I stepped up and got it. By that time I was, what would it be, 26 and a half, 27 maybe. I started the job, pretty soon I realised how serious it was, because you were dealing with really all sorts of nasty. I'm a very sensitive person, which has taken me a long while to realise. And I did actually apply for the youth offending team directly, and both times. Well, the first time I didn't get in. I just think I was too inexperienced, The second time I did it, I was sure I was going to get in, because I'd spoken to the lady, I'd been down there, explained myself clearly, made a good impression. And when I had the interview, I had the most awful interview. I couldn't answer the most simplest questions. And I look back now, because 6 months later, I was getting the symptoms, and I then got diagnosed with a brain tumour. And I look back and I think, somebody up there knew if I'd got that job after 6 months, and then suddenly got a brain tumour, what support would I have got? I would have got none. Leicestershire Police were absolutely brilliant with me. Loads of nearly 25 years, loads and loads of support. And sort of flexibility, and so I didn't feel too bad about not getting it. But I had by then already was starting to work with the children's home. So getting on to the medical side, do you want me to go into the sort of doctor's bit, etc.?
Well, let's start with this question of those symptoms. They were like the first indication, weren't they?
They were, that's right.
Obviously, you didn't know what was really going on.
Not at all, no.
What symptoms were you actually having?
Started with headaches, and you can see the holes, the operation bit here. They were always here. So, every day I'd get like a 2-hour headache. Well, not every day at the time, it's probably every 3 days I'd get a 2-hour headache there before it went away. And I've been having these headaches every 6 months for probably 5 years, 6 years, and not really paid any attention to them, because it was only every 6 months. But it was always there. It was always really painful and felt really deep. And I was just, I knew I had to basically had to go and lie down and go to sleep, and it would go away. But this time, it was every 2-3 days I'd get a 2-hour headache, and it was not whatever I had to take painkillers for it to go away. That was the only time, and they progressively got worse. So it would be every day I'd get these headaches, and then I started to get other symptoms like my handwriting. I felt as though I couldn't control my left hand properly, and so when I was writing my scenes of crime reports, it'd be really tiny, squiggly writing, and then other people would notice that it was going down the page, not going across. It was going sort of at about a 70-degree angle across the page, and I was like, really, am I doing that? I didn't know. And then I'd be bumping into things on the left, so my spatial awareness on the left side was very poor. So I'd walk across the office and bump into a filing cabinet. When I was driving the car, I'd hit the curb on the left. My wife thought I was doing it on purpose. I think there was other things going on, and she thought I was doing it on purpose to frighten her. It's ridiculous, really. There was other symptoms as well, but
did that ever lead you into any difficult situations, any trouble, accidents? Or?
No.
And how worried were you by those symptoms at the time?
Well, my dad had got Alzheimer's, and I thought, I'm getting Alzheimer's. I'm very young. I was 43. I'm very young to get Alzheimer's, but I've heard people getting it. So after about 2 weeks of these symptoms, I went to it was my GP, and that would be October, sort of mid-October. And I just said, I've got all these, but mainly it was headaches. These headaches are, really excruciating, and I'm getting them, now it's almost every day. And he just sort of said, well, because he knows me well, he's been my GP for about 17 years. So he didn't ever suggest it was depression or that, because that had more or less gone because of, the children's work. When I was doing the children's work, I was fine,
There is a danger, isn't there, occasionally, that clinicians who know there's been a mental health issue can say, oh, it's just that again.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So my GP said, I don't know what it is, Chris. He knows, of course, I have been a bit of a worrier as well, a bit anxious about things. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. But if you're not better in 2 weeks, come back and see me again. So, of course, 2 weeks later I was worse. The symptoms, the headaches were worse, the sort of bumping into things, everything was worse. So I went back. It wasn't my GP, it was a locum. And just what you said, the locum said, "Oh, I see you've had depression and anxiety and panic attacks. I think it's those coming back." And I'm trying to say it isn't that, because I recognise that now. When I'm stressed, I recognise it now. It's not that. Oh well, I don't know what it is. I think it might be. You don't know it. What painkillers are you taking? So I said paracetamol. Go and take stronger painkillers. But if you're not better in 2 weeks, come back. Classic cop out. So I went away. I started taking the big anodine things that are Solpadol or whatever it is, but it was only when I was taking them that I didn't have headaches. So 2 weeks later, went back, it's him again. And he said the same thing as last time. I think it was useless. I mean, as a GP, I hope I'd never come under him. He just said, I think it's the same thing. Take stronger painkillers. But if you're not better in 2 weeks, come back again. So of course, but in 2 weeks' time, my wife would tell you, in the night, I'd have these headaches. I'd get out of bed and I'd bang my head against the wall because it was that bad. Went back to sit, and thankfully it was my GP. And he said, "Oh, this is no good, Chris." He said, "Well, I'll have to send you for a brain scan." I said, "Well, why didn't you put me down for one when I first saw you?" And he said, "Well, I can't." He said, "If everybody came to me with headaches, I sent for a brain scan, they'd be completely overwhelmed." I said, "Oh, I suppose so." He said, "There's up to a 9-month waiting list." This was the beginning of December. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, how long, I don't know if I can manage, for that long. These headaches are getting that bad. And my boss had noticed that things were not right. And I know now she'd written to the personnel department to say, "If you any other work that Chris can do on the same pay scale, because he's struggling with the work, that we're giving him." But anyway, I think that was December the 2nd. And on December the 5th, so only 3 days later, I'd been sent home from work from the police on December the 4th because I didn't really know what I was doing. The following day I was at the children's home, December the 5th. They sent me home because I was supervising a girl there cooking a casserole in a casserole dish. And when it was cooked, I said, "I'd better fetch it out in case you drop it." Guess what? I dropped it. So my boss came in, the line manager, said, "Chris, I'm going to have to send you home, because you're clearly not capable of looking after yourself, never mind anybody else." He said, "We've noticed you've had a problem the last few weeks." I said, "Well, thank you for noticing, but I don't know what's the matter. I think I've got Alzheimer's or something." Now, I went home on my motorbike. On the way home on the dual carriageway, I was driving, but I was overtaking. There was very slow moving traffic. The bus, for me, they were doing 50. I was overtaking down the middle at about 60 and thinking, is this right? I didn't know whether it was right to overtake down the middle, or not. Eventually I decided, no, it doesn't feel safe. So when I got the opportunity, I pulled back into the left side, went too far, went right up the grass verge, came back on the road and thought, that was odd, why did I do that? Anyway, got home. At the children's home, you eat with the children, so I'd had nothing to eat. So I was in the kitchen making myself a sandwich, and suddenly I was just spontaneously sick. I didn't know why. I didn't feel sick, just a blur, and it all went all down me. So I thought, bathroom, get changed, get out these clothes, have a shower. And when I was in the bathroom getting changed, getting out my clothes, I was overbalanced and fell in the bath. And I just couldn't get out. I was obviously sweaty because I'd been sick, and I just lost so much that was the other thing, I'd lost so much upper body strength. My son was into bodybuilding, and he got a punch bag. Punch this bag, Dad. I felt like I was like a mouse trying to punch this bag. I just got no strength in my left arm at all. Anyway, so I knew that the time was about 3 o'clock, and my wife would be home in 15 minutes. So I trying to get out of the bath, I banged my head. So I thought, this is not good, just lie here and wait. And the wife came home, helped me out the bath, and she'd helped me into bed, basically. I can't remember a lot after that. Apparently she called 999. Apparently she bought me a cup of tea and I spilt it all down myself. She had to put me in the shower again. And the ambulance was like, "Is it an emergency?" Because my wife's screaming. "Well, I don't know, but my husband's been terrible for weeks, or months, and now he's collapsed and fell in the bath. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not making any sense, So they came, took me to the walk-in centre, and thankfully a doctor at the walk-in centre had something about him and said, "There's something not right here." He said to my wife, possibly he's had a stroke. So he did a few tests. No, I've not had a stroke. Right, I'm sending you for a brain scan today. But by that time, it was like 5 in the late afternoon. And by the time they called an ambulance to take me to Leicester General Hospital, all the radiologists had gone home. So I had to wait till the next day when they finally found that I'd got a brain tumour, yeah.
And was it diagnosed then and there?
Not the type, but they... Poor nurse, you know, I felt really sorry for her. She came to see me the next morning after I'd had this scan. It was a CT scan. And she was given the job of telling me. She came to the bed and said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Sedman. I've got the results of your scan here. You've got a very large lump in your brain, and it is a brain tumour." I mean, it must have been horrible for her having to tell me. I look back now and think that. But for me, when she said a very large lump in your brain, that minute or second, it's as though I switched off. Somehow it wasn't me she was talking to. I was somewhere else and she was telling somebody else. So you've got a very large lump in your brain. It is a brain tumour. And for 2 hours, I was sort of like in a world of my own, you know. Or they said, we're going to start you on steroids straight away. And probably, to get them straight away, 2 hours later, I guess, because they really shrink the tumour fantastically. 2 hours later, it hit me, I've got a brain tumour. And it was just like, well, that's it, that's the end of my life. I'm going to die. I've never heard of anybody with a brain tumour who'd survived. You know, I'll never see my wife again, I'll never see my children again. And then they said they were going to send me to the Queen's Medical Centre for an operation. And working for the police, the only people I know who'd been to the QMC with head injuries had died. So I thought, I'm going to the QMC to die. Well, you know, I felt absolutely awful. And I say I've been a Christian for 20 years or so. And it was a real test. Not that God wasn't there, but that how could I trust him? You know, it allowed me to have a brain tumour. How could I trust him? Can I trust him again? And it's only been that, you know, building up, I suppose, of, you know, that I'm now able to be as positive as I am.
Now, how long were you in that position of real uncertainty but fearing the worst for?
Quite a while, because once they got the steroids into me, you know, I was so much better, no headaches, you know, I was rational again, I didn't have any problems walking, bumping into things. So I began to think, hey, it's gone away, I'm all right, I don't have to have any problem, any operation at all. But of course that's not true. It wasn't until the following day, I mean, obviously I had to ring Cath and say, I've got a brain tumour, you know, and then she ran around the family. So I had so many visitors from my family, church family, you know, which was great, but for the wrong reason. And it wasn't until the following day that transport was made available to take me to the QMC. And I was down, because it was a very big tumour. It was about the size of a large lemon. So you imagine how it squashes your, you know, everything else in your brain.
And do you know where in the brain it was? You've been given a hint because you said about the scar.
It was here, but it was so big. It was like wedge shaped as well. So the bulk of it, thankfully, was on the outside, and it went right into the middle of my brain. So that they always call it debulking when you have an operation. They can't get it all out. They get as much out as they safely can. So I went up to the QMC. That was on the 9th. I was supposed to have the operation the next morning. So it was like nil by mouth from midnight. At sort of 6 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I was so upset. I was crying. I thought, I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die in this operation. I'm going to die from the anaesthetic, or the scalpel will go to the wrong place and I'll be killed. Because I got told by the consultant what a serious operation it was, you know. So I suppose he has to give the worst case scenario. Really. I just felt there's no chance of me surviving. At 6 o'clock in the morning, or 6:30, I rang my vicar from my mobile. I said, please will you pray with me, because I just can't cope, you know. I was almost sobbing down the phone to him, just thinking, that's it, my life's over, you know. And then, you know, so he prayed with me. I felt a bit better. Time went on, 9 o'clock. The nurse, am I going down? So, oh yeah, but apparently there's an emergency brought in, so you're going down after the emergency. It'll be about 11 o'clock. Okay, yeah. Can I have anything to eat? No, of course not. In between that time, a patient was brought in late in the afternoon who was dying, and because they've got no side rooms available, he was put diagonally opposite to me. And about 11 o'clock at night, all his family came in. They're all sobbing, "Oh, love you, Dad. Bye, Dad." You know, it was terrible because I still got my operation to face, and I just felt, oh, you know, I'm definitely going to die. You know, this is awful. You know, and then my family are going to be sobbing over me. You know, I can't bear it. So about 2:30 in the morning, I rang an old lady from church, and I knew wouldn't mind me. And said, "Please," you know, I was sobbing, "Please pray with me, Ruth. You know, this is happening." And she was her prayers were so comforting. They really were, you know, and real. Like we say, things have got to be real. And I just felt so much better. Went back to bed. When I went back to bed, he'd gone. They'd managed to find a side room for him, so that was better. Although not before, but his wife had come over to me and said, "I'm so sorry." And I was like, well, you know, these things happen, don't they? I was able to be, you know, sort of practical with it. I said, "I'm so sorry about what's happening to you. You know, it's far worse for you than it is for me. But thank you for coming over, you know." Anyway, so the following day after that, I went down for my operation, and I just felt a lot calmer. But they managed to get out 90%, which is obviously great. I honestly didn't expect to wake up still, but I just was a lot more peaceful. But obviously I did wake up in like the post-surgery unit, and I got a banging headache, as you can imagine. They got me on morphine, and I could self-administer for about half an hour. So I got this plunger. If it got too bad, press the plunger, you get more morphine. That was great stuff, that was. No wonder all these drug users take it. But anyway, so the nurse came to me and said, "Oh, you're awake, Mr. Sedman." She says, "I've had your daughter on the phone wanting to know if you're all right, but you were still unconscious. So I'll ring her back, and I can tell her now you're awake." And you know, she says, "Can you tell me? We've lost your daughter's phone number." That's a trick, wasn't it? "Can you tell us, you know, the phone number?" But I was on good numbers straight away. Then I said, "Oh, my home number's this. If there's no reply from that." And so off she went, and I thought, "Hey, I'm all right." I wiggled my toes. I can talk. I can think. I can speak. "Oh, thank you. I'm all right." You know, it was a real elation until the really bad headaches came back again. So, "Oh, go away." Yeah.
So you had the headaches returned, did they? But
only because of the surgery.
Post-operative.
Post-operative headaches. Yeah, I mean, they went after about 2 days, you know, and then they never came back wonderfully. So.
Now, was the tumour in the frontal lobe?
Right frontal lobe.
On the right-hand side?
Yes, and it was a grade 3 astrocytoma, something or other. Yeah.
And people may not know, watching this, that generally one side of the brain controls the other side.
That's right.
Movements.
That's right. That's it. So because it was here, it was controlling things on the left. That's
and
right.
You mentioned on the earlier account that you had weakness on that left-hand side.
I did, very much so.
And
I didn't know why.
Impairment issue, you know,
It wasn't. My sight was fine.
Awareness.
It was a spatial awareness of how close I was to something.
Yeah.
Not because of the vision, just because you do a lot by feeling, don't you? You know, so subconsciously, I know that desk is like 18 inches from me. You know, but I was saying that's 18 inches from me. It was next to me. So as I walked and my shoulder banged into it, what's going on?
They sometimes call it an agnosia, where you lose the awareness of a certain function that you took for granted before.
Absolutely.
The problem with losing the awareness is you're not necessarily aware it's gone until you suddenly hit something or
absolutely
bump into
right.
something.
Yeah,
it's an odd situation.
That's right, very much so. Yes, and explaining it to other people, it was almost not that I wasn't believed, but that they couldn't understand it. You know, so I couldn't understand it either. So there's two of us.
Now that was the operation out of the way, but then there comes a period of recovery and possibly further treatment if it's indicated.
That's right. I was sorry.
Yeah, you said they got about 90% of the tumour.
That's right.
So did they try and give additional treatments after that?
Yes, I was told that I knew they would only be able to get a certain percentage out, but they hoped they'd be able to get as much as possible. So I thought 90% is pretty good. And they said that I would have to have radio and chemotherapy after that, but not immediately, because the main part of it has been dealt with. So it wasn't an emergency anymore, and it wasn't until February and March 2005 that I started 6 weeks of both as an outpatient. But you probably need to know before that, in January, now before that even, because people would be interested, I guess it might be important to them, over Christmas, because they sent me home with codeine being, suitable to, for the pain I was in, And I now know that codeine is a terrible thing for constipation. And I could not go to the toilet for 11 days. I was in agony. I got like a strangulated hemorrhoid. I was so uncomfortable. Christmas Day, I ate my dinner and then wished I hadn't, because I was just so full. I couldn't go to the toilet. And then, so the January the 1st, I remember thinking, well, I'm definitely going to die of this, because I felt so ill. Whereas before the tumour, I felt in pain and symptoms. I never felt ill. This time I felt so ill. Thankfully, I've been assigned a Loros nurse. This Loros nurse came around. She says, "What's the matter, Chris?" So I told her. She says, "Oh, that's no good." She says, "You want Movicol. It's like a sachet of a powder that will get you going." Well, thankfully, she said, like, take about 6 sachets today, and 4 sachets tomorrow. And the next day I went, oh, relief. But I'm just guessing that maybe, I know that codeine is a constipator for a lot of people. So people are watching this, they might want to be aware. You might not want to have codeine as a painkiller.
Well, in a way, it's a lesson for clinicians as well about describing things that that have a purpose.
Yes.
But they come with a side effect.
That's right, absolutely.
We have to be aware of the side effect as much as what we're trying to treat, so we don't introduce a new problem.
Yes.
The problem with that drug is it had an opioid analgesic in there, which slows down the motility of the bowel.
Yes.
So
certainly
that's combated by a certain drug.
Yes.
But unless you know that, you can be creating a problem, which, as you very clearly describe, is quite a serious one. It shouldn't be underestimated.
That's right. Cath had already been to the doctor saying, "I feel very weak. I don't know what the matter is." And they said, "Well, you've had such a shock. It probably is shock coming out. But if you're not better, come back in 2 weeks." So my wife, being as she is, left it 3 weeks. And then, so this happened. So she went down to the doctor's the next day, and the doctor said, "Well, there's obviously something wrong. I'll do some blood tests." And the blood tests were examined immediately. I was amazed. 6 o'clock that evening, she got a phone call from the Royal. "You need to come in to the haematology unit immediately. Your blood levels are dangerously low." So a lady from church took us in. She says, "What's the matter?" "Well, it's probably just a bit anemic. You probably just need a blood transfusion, that's all." Not knowing what was to come. And we got told she got leukemia. Immediately it hit me. There's no 2-hour gap there. And I was like, inside I was screaming, "What are you doing, God? What are you doing?" It's bad enough I've got a brain. Now Cath's got leukemia. One of us is going to die. I really felt it was her, because I was feeling a lot better at that stage. So how can I trust you ever again? I can't believe this is happening. It felt like a tragedy movie from Hollywood. I've got a brain tumour. She's now at the same time got leukemia. What is happening? And I really, really felt awful. I didn't show it in front of my wife, because I thought, well, I've got to be strong for her. Inside I was really crying, but she pulled through, thank God, and she's now been discharged. She came out of hospital in July after I'd had a scan. About the same, so both at the same time. I got told both of us were in remission. So thank you, God, and we went home together, and that was absolutely wonderful. To be home together and well was absolutely marvellous.
So you were back to having a period where you were both back to normal
selves. That's it. But I've missed out a bit, because for 6 weeks during the 6 months she was in, I was going in as an outpatient to have my radio and chemotherapy. Now the chemotherapy, I have to say, it was tablets. It was never mind the name of the tablet, but it didn't really. Perhaps because I was on the radiotherapy, I didn't feel any ill effects really from this chemotherapy tablet, except that my food tasted absolutely foul. Everything tasted like, if you can imagine, metallic cardboard. Awful. Food I enjoyed, I hated. Food that I didn't enjoy, I was eating, because at least it tasted of something different. So I don't like spicy things. I'll be putting pepper on everything, because at least it tasted of pepper. Even though I didn't like pepper, it tasted of something.
What about if the food was really neutral? Would it still taste bad?
Yeah, everything. I love chocolate, couldn't eat it because it tasted so foul. My favourite dish, simple dish, was egg and beans on toast. Tasted foul. I'd put pepper on it, and there was no point in eating anything I enjoyed because I just had to eat nutritious food so that I was strong. I knew that.
Was that a side effect that went along with the chemotherapy?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. As soon as I finished the chemo, within about 2 weeks, my food taste went back to normal. So I'd lost a lot of weight, as you can imagine. So I didn't care how much chocolate I ate.
So you had about six weeks of additional treatment.
Yeah, and the radiotherapy was the worst because it was every Monday to Friday for 6 weeks. Now, when it first, of course, it's your brain as well. It's not like it's to your foot, so your foot feels bad. For the first 2 weeks, I didn't really notice any symptoms. After that, I noticed I was feeling more and more tired. And after about the 5th week, so I've got 2 weeks to go, I was absolutely shattered. All I could do was get up in the morning, have some. You got to be sensible and keep yourself strong. Have some breakfast with a cup of tea, and it didn't taste nice, but you got to do it. I went and lay down on the sofa because I didn't want to go back to bed, and I'd lie there watching telly till it was dinner time. Get up, make myself a couple of sandwiches and a drink, back down watching telly again.
During that tiredness phase,
yeah.
If you forced yourself to do something exertional, did it make it worse, or did you feel better for it?
I think psychologically I felt better for doing something. Physically, it was like, oh, my legs are so tired, I've got to go and lie down or sit down. Sometimes I just had to sit down, sometimes it was lying down.
Was it almost like a different type of tiredness to the tiredness you'd experienced before?
It was like having flu. You know how shattered you feel when you've got flu? That's what it felt like, but I've got no flu symptoms. But really, really shattered, yeah.
And how long did that go on for, the tiredness?
Well, from about the 5th week and the 6th week, it was like that. But of course, I was having to be picked up by ambulance to go in to have me radiotherapy and come out again. As soon as I got home, if it was dinner time, maybe get myself something to eat and straight back on the sofa to sleep. And then gradually, after the 6th week, I gradually started feeling slowly better. So I got more energy. I didn't have to go and lie down for such a long time. I might have to lie down for an hour only, But then after 6 weeks, so 6 weeks after the last radiotherapy treatment, I felt so, only a few days earlier, I felt so much better. So I got up as normal. I guess it was Monday morning. Made myself breakfast. I didn't have to go into hospital. I was thinking, great, I can do what I want today. I still feel shattered, but no, I don't feel so shattered because it's been 6 weeks later. I can do some gardening, I thought, I had my breakfast. I thought, I'm not going to do the gardening yet because I've got to let it go down. Sat on the sofa and suddenly this massive wave of tiredness just hit me. I just had to lie down and go to sleep. When I woke up, I thought, this isn't right. So I rang my cancer specialist nurse, Audrey Hopwood, lovely lady. I said, something's the matter. I said, it's been 6 weeks since the treatment. I've been feeling so much better. And suddenly this awful tiredness, this absolute shattering tiredness has hit me. And she said, did you say 6 weeks after? I said, yeah. She says, that's normal. I said, why didn't somebody tell you? I said, I was really worried. I thought, I was going to, have to go back in hospital again. Why don't they, if they know it's going to happen, they should tell you. Oh, don't forget, in 6 weeks after the treatment, you'll probably, most likely, feel absolutely shattered again. So for 2 weeks, I was back to how I was when I was on the radiotherapy. Then I had to go in for a scan, and the scan bloke had been the same chap that I'd seen every time before. And I said, how are you, Chris? I said, I'm all right, mate. But I said, a couple of weeks ago, this dreadful tiredness hit me out of the blue. He said, was it 6 weeks after the treatment? So even he knew. It's so annoying. Why don't these, experts tell you this is likely to happen? Because it'll stop you worrying. So that happened again, but after 2 weeks, I gradually felt better and better, stronger and stronger, and was just doing more things,
So how long would you say it took until you were really back to, let's say, 90% or more?
Probably about, so after I finished the whole treatment, probably a couple of months.
Was there anything you couldn't do after that period? Because you mentioned before about driving and
yes, that's right. I was certainly not allowed to drive and not ride my motorbike. I was riding my bicycle because I knew, well, I wasn't really strong enough to walk far, so biking was a lot easier. So I started cycling. A bit wobbly at first, but soon got okay. yeah, I mean, I couldn't play a game of football, you know, I couldn't do anything, or tennis, I couldn't run, because I was still too weak, but I didn't really worry about that. I thought, well, that'll come back in time. I got my legs had gone sparrow legs, all muscle wastage was, you know, incredible, because I'd just been lying on the sofa, you know, and such like, so I knew I needed to eat good food, eat well, eat healthily, and I used to try and do little walks, so I just walk down the road 100 yards, if that, and back, and try and increase it every day if possible.
So you almost did your own kind of rehabilitation program?
Yes.
Did you ever receive any advice there?
I did, but only because I went back to my GP, because my ankles were absolute agony when I got out of bed in the morning. It was so painful I just sometimes collapsed on the floor. Absolute agony. And I went back and he said, you've got plantar fasciitis. But you probably know is a shortening of the hamstrings, because you're laid up for so long, you're not walking. Cycling didn't help because you don't stretch your legs properly. So he told me I was going to send you for 6 weeks of physio at Loughborough Hospital, which was great. And the chap there was brilliant. He was I can't remember his name now, Asian chap called Jed or Jez or something, but he was absolutely brilliant. You know, he seemed to know what was the matter with me within about an hour of me seeing him. Right, these are the exercises that are going to help, and they really did. They really did help. But again, if I hadn't gone to my GP, I suppose you've got to complain, haven't you? If they don't think there's anything wrong, they're not going to come to you. I'm sure if Julie had come to me, my specialist, Loris nurse, she could have got something going, but. As far as I can remember, they didn't. It was me having to say, I've got a real problem here, you know.
Let's say that you were a person who was post-operative, you had your treatment and you were going to that rehabilitation phase, but there wasn't really any clear person around who you could ask.
Yeah.
Is there anything you could have done for yourself in retrospect in that time, going back from the moment the chemotherapy and radiotherapy finished?
Yeah.
I mean, for example, would you advise people to push themselves, to do more, even though it's a real struggle in that early
No, period? I think I'd advise them to rest as much as possible, eat healthily and rest as much as possible, because it just wasn't possible to
until they're able.
Until they're able. Once they start feeling able, yes, go for a little walk. It's better for your mental health as well. Get yourself out of the house just a little, or go and have a cup of tea with a neighbour if you can. Just to get you out, a little tiny bit of walking. Well, everybody's individual. Maybe some people wouldn't have a problem with walking. I guess it depends where the tumour is, of course. If it's a brain tumour, then you're likely to. And then, of course, it depends where the tumour is in the brain. Because it wasn't until I had the brain tumour, I didn't realise there's something like over 100 different types of brain tumour. So it depends on what type of tumour, where it is, how much chemotherapy and radiotherapy you have, what type the chemo is.
What did the medical staff tell you eventually about your outlook? Your prognosis, they call it, don't they?
That's right. Prognosis.
How much was it? How much was the treatment successful, and what was the outlook for the future?
Well, I went into remission, so I got told, it's great. Let's hope you stay in. You'll probably be. They didn't say you'll be in remission for 2 years, but the hope was I'd be in remission for 2 years. In actual fact, it was 3.5 years. So 3.5 years of like no problems at all. And even when I went for this sort of routine scan, I didn't really know there was much wrong. It was June 2009. I went for a routine scan. I had noticed a couple of things. I'd forgotten. I'd been to a wedding, whatever it was, to Enderby Church, and I went on my motorbike, took a rucksack on my back, and left the rucksack behind. I thought, oh dear, I remember forgetting things like that when I first had the symptoms, in 2004. But it didn't really. It was only the one-off, so it didn't really bother me. My wife said as well, "You've forgotten it. You're not getting ill again, are you?" I said, "Well, I don't think so. I've got no headaches. There's no other symptoms at all." But I had this scan in 2009. It said it's growing back already. It was the size of a sort of a large grape. So referred to the quick QMC again. But because I was a lot more aware of things, more information, so I wasn't so panicky. And my consultant surgeon, Mr. Byrne, obviously I think he's a brilliant bloke because he's done 2 operations and I'm as well as I am. So, fantastic guy. And he said, "Chris, you really don't need to be as worried as you were the last time. Not that there's not risk, of course there's risk, but this operating this time is my bread and butter. You know, the last time it was a massive tumour, it went right into the middle of your brain, it was very difficult to carefully extract most of it. This time it's a lot smaller and it's right under the bone. You know, so it says it should not be so much of an invasive surgery or so difficult to get out. I don't want you to be thinking, oh, there's no problem. You know, there could be. You know, you could still die. There could be paralysis, whatever, the things you had before, but it's far less likely. And therefore I really felt nowhere near as scared as I did. I still prayed a lot, you know, please help. But
did that turn out to be the case? It was fairly routine.
It was fairly routine. I was the next day I was out of bed, you know, sort of walking to the toilet. So it was the time before. You know, I'd been in high dependency unit the first time all night. I had a terrible, couldn't sleep at all. You know, really couldn't sleep. You know, terrible, lots of pain, lots of beeping and noises going on around you. But this time, I seemed to have a good night's sleep. I guess I must have been on the HDU again, but I don't remember that. And no, I didn't. I went straight back to the ward. That's right. And say the next by the afternoon, I was up going to the toilet. You know, so I thought this is amazing. And the following day, he said if you're well the next day, you can go home. So that was obviously really good. I still had to have no, I didn't. The latest chemotherapy, which is a sort of discovery since the first operation, which is, they call it chemotherapy wafers, and they put them into the tumour site. So they debulk as much as possible, and then they can put up to 6, I think they put 4, around the tumour site. So it killed, they debulked and killed about 90% of it again. So it went down to about the size of a fingernail, but I then got told it had transformed to a grade 4. Although that wasn't quite the way it went, I think the way I was told. My consultant did say before the operation, these tumours, when they come back, have a habit of transforming, and it's possible that it has transformed into a worse type, which would be a grade 4. And he said, but let's hope that's not happened. And my wife said, is there any chance it's transformed for a better tumour, to a 2? And he said, well, in 100 cases, it would happen once or twice. He said, so it's extremely unlikely. It's far more likely if it transforms, it's going to be worse. But he didn't say it had transformed, so I wasn't aware that it had. And it was so I didn't have to have any sort of external chemotherapy, if you like, tablets or anything. I can't have any more radiotherapy, because once you've had that 6 weeks, you can't have any more radiotherapy or X-rays, because apparently it'll damage your brain. So I just had to wait. I had a scan in, it would have been probably October, saw my consultant in the November, and he then knew it was a grade 4. This is my Leicester consultant, Dr. Boyanju. And but when I saw him, he never said anything about it transforming into a grade 4. I think he just assumed that Mr. Bernard told me. So me and my wife were there, and he said, well, it's not quite been killed off, Chris. He said, obviously you remain very well, but it's not quite been killed off, so we need to give you some more chemotherapy. So I said, well, do I have to have it now? Because it was November. I said, can I, do you think I'm well enough to enjoy Christmas without any treatment? He said, yes, I don't want to spoil your Christmas, They're very good like that. They're very flexible. If they think you've got to have something desperate, then you've got to have it. But if they think, well, it's not going to matter, a month's not going to matter, and you've got a holiday, you've got Christmas, they'll let you sort of have that time to enjoy with your family, and then so you can start it. So I started it in January. I had 9 months of, it's called PCV treatment, which again is fairly new. So it's 3 different types of chemo given all together. But my consultant, Dr. Boyanju, said, I think this tumour is having an effect on you, and you may not be able to work as well as you were before. He said, in fact, I recommend that you retire from work. I can write a report and you'll be retired with a pension. But I didn't want that. It felt as though I was being sort of given up and dying, giving up no purpose to my life anymore, no, not worth anything. So I said, I don't really want to give up yet. And he said, okay, it's up to you. So I carried on working for another year, but he wrote to the force medical officer, and he said, I'm going to write this letter as though, you might need to retire. So he said, I might paint the picture quite darkly. He said, but that's in case you change your mind and want to retire. So I said, okay, He said, I'll send you home with a copy. No, he said, have you not been sent a copy? He said, well, he said, I've already sent that letter. And I said, well, you told me you were going to send a copy, because I think I spoke to him on the phone. He said, I've not had a copy. And Cath's going, she's ever so angry. Why has he not had a copy? Why has the work had it before we have? So he's like, I don't know anything about it. It's my secretary that deals with that. So she rushed off and got us a copy. But because he'd not mentioned anything about it changing from a 3 to a 4, I just folded it up, stuffed it in my pocket and went home. Got home and I rang, we've got like a prayer chain at church and they always want to know what's happening. So I rang the lady who was in charge and I said, while I was talking to her, I said, I found this letter in my pocket. And I said, Cath, have a look at that. I said, this is from Dr. Boyanger, and I was just talking to the lady on the phone. And Cath goes, hey, what's this? And it said, the tumour has now transformed from a grade 3 astrocytoma to a grade 4 glioma, and the prognosis is very poor. That hit me like a brick. I was like, what? I really felt I hadn't got until Christmas. I thought, I'm going to die before Christmas, I think it said something like, the majority of patients die within 2 years. What? But I felt as though I wasn't going to last that long. So that really upset me. Again, it was like getting used. Can I trust you again with this? What's going on? How long have I got to live? And I went to work, took the letter to show my boss, who was a bit more practical. She looked at it obviously with different eyes and said, hang on a minute, this letter was written even before you had your scan. So this letter was written quite some time ago. So and you're still well. So is there that much to worry about? And also she's not actually said your type of tumour. So it's sort of it's a generalised. So I was like, okay. So, but they did sort of say, well, you'll have to work reduced hours, which was a relief really, because I enjoyed work, but it was it was not always easy to get there and back. I used to cycle down to the train station, get the train to Leicester, and then cycle to work. And in sunny days, it was nice. Rainy days, it was horrible.
It's interesting what you said about your outlook going back to work.
Yes.
Because you could have accepted that early retirement.
I could.
At a, for you, maybe a premature stage. But you felt you needed that purpose. And again, a lot of people do say that maintaining a role or a function is very important to them.
That's right, yes.
And without that, you can almost become more prone to the deterioration in your condition if it were to deteriorate.
Absolutely right.
And you definitely fought on. But was it hard to maintain that work during that phase?
It was. Some days were difficult because my boss is a brilliant lady. Well, ex-boss was a brilliant lady. But sometimes she used to speak too fast. Even when I was well, she used to give you about 6 tasks at once. And I had to say, when I came back from the first time, I said, Barbara, you're just talking too fast, and I can't grasp things if you talk so fast and give me so many things to do. I'm sorry, look, but could you just talk a bit slower and just give me 2 tasks? And I can do one now, I can write the other one down, I can do it. Then when I've done them, give me some more. So I did have to slow down, and I couldn't do things as quickly. And she learned as we worked together, and I was given a different role, an intelligence role, because I couldn't drive, so I could no longer go to crime scenes. Although I did get my licence back in that 2005-2009 period. So for 18 months, I went back to my old role, and I quite enjoyed it.
So did you stay in that role,
I did.
Or a similar role until the present day?
No, they in 2010, at the end of my chemotherapy, my boss said, this is not very nice, Chris. I've just been to a meeting where, because of government cuts, they're going to be making a lot of redundancies, and in our department, your name's first on the list. Because you're so ill, you can't do the role you're employed to do. Even though you're so valuable to me, they won't have it. And I thought, oh my goodness, this was probably November 2010. So I'd not long finished the chemotherapy. That PCV also was very unpleasant. It gave me the most awful stomach. When I was on it, the symptoms lasted for about 5 days, and the pain was awful. You never wanted to eat anything, but strangely, when you did eat, the pain went away while the food was going through your stomach. But you know, it was such you didn't really want to eat. And
so what's the current situation with work?
They retired me. Well, no, I went back to my consultant and said, you said like over a year ago that I should consider retirement. I said, they're now threatening me with redundancy. Would you still support me to retire on ill health grounds? And he looked at me with a weird look. I said, of course I would, Chris. He said, you've done another year. He said, you've done so well, to do another year. You've not sort of said, I'm going to rip the system, I'm going to retire and, live a life of luxury. Not that I could, but you've tried hard. You've done another year, of course. So normally, you probably know with these like NHS, police, whatever, they would send you to a medical board. I didn't have any of that because it was a grade 4 delay. It was like, oh my goodness, let this chap retire as soon as possible. But it was actually January the 15th was my retirement date, 2011. So I felt awful, when I first got retired. I didn't know what I was getting up in the morning. Cath my wife was still working. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was like, well, they wanted me back as a volunteer. I said, yeah, I'll come back as a volunteer. But they were so slow in organising that. It was like 6 months later, and loads of security forms. You'd think I'd never worked for the police. I worked for them for 31 years. It felt like they never knew me at all, And eventually I got permission to go back in. But for that time, it was a real battle, I was sort of doing lots of jobs around the house to please my wife, having some purpose, saying to people at church, if you need anything doing, when I'm well, ask me, I'll try and help. Just because I needed a purpose, I needed to be useful.
I think a lot of people say that as well. So how many days volunteering are you doing now?
I'm not, because I've been so poorly recently that I've not been able to. She wants me to run a particular part of the programme, which nobody else is currently doing. It's very important, but I'm just not well enough. I've got to get to Forsaid Quarters at Enderby now, so it's 2 buses. Well, it's just too difficult for me to. I'm not well enough to give the time available that the job needs. So I've said, if you can you get me permission to work at Syston Police Station, because it's much nearer. My wife goes once a week to work at Oxfam there. I could go once a week, guaranteed, maybe twice a week, because it's distraction burglaries. It's really important work where old people are robbed, but they said, no, you can't work there because it's health and safety. You've got to work with one of us. Madness,
What's it like overall? Given all these experiences that you've been through, and given the role that you've had and tried to maintain, and then it's been difficult at times.
Yes.
You are living with that tumour, albeit partially treated, let's call it.
Yes. It's still life limiting, and I don't forget that.
What's life like now for you?
I still, because I was doing voluntary work with another organisation, and that's sort of good and bad. So I'm not sure whether to continue with that or go somewhere else. So life is still, I wake up in the morning at the moment. I just come back from a holiday last week. It was a lovely holiday. And this week it's hit me again. What useful purpose when I get up, I'm like, what am I going to do today? And there's only so much gardening and sort of other work you can do. So sometimes I still do feel a bit of a loose end. I still don't forget that I've got a terminal illness. I hope, God willing, that I've still got quite a long time yet. So I'd love to. I've got one grandchild. I'd love to be able to see him grow up. My wife's been discharged. That's great. Our relationship is a lot more mature than it was before. So I think we, in general, support each other better than we did before. We go out for meals at least once a week, which we never did before. Life always seemed too busy for that. So in some ways life is better, because I suppose I've experienced these things, and I also find it very rewarding doing stuff like this, being able to tell other patients, don't give up, there is hope, especially for me, maybe for some people there's hope in God. He has a plan for us. We don't know it. I don't know it. Thank God I don't know it, because it might say you're going to die next month. in 10 years' time.
You seem to have a sense of humour about
Yeah.
those thoughts that some people can't even address, like your own mortality, and
Yeah.
you described your condition as terminal in a way,
Yeah.
but you seem to manage to exist anyway.
Yes.
You maintain a good balance even with that hanging over you.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's 22 years of faith, or nearly 22 years of faith, a route that's been built. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you said to me, you were my consultant, said, Chris, you've got 3 days to live, I would be gutted. Death is that close. Death is an unknown for me. I've not been to heaven or wherever it is yet, and so I'll be very scared. But until that moment comes, there's no point in me being worried, upset, living a life of depression or anxiety, because it doesn't help me. It helps nobody around me. God said, I've got a plan for you, and he's got a plan. He loves all of us. He's got a plan for all of us if we're willing to listen. I've got to listen to that and say, okay, what do you want me to do? Every morning I pray, what do you want me to do today, Lord? What good thing can I do today? And that keeps me going. Not that I think at the end of the day, I've done great things today. I don't. I just think, I wish I could have done more, but it's not been too bad. It's been okay. I've had a good meal out with my wife, or I've helped my son with his work, or I've done whatever. That's been good, and I'm still here, and I've still got work to do. If he wanted to take me, as the lady I talked to this morning before I came, I had a quick pray with her. She said, Chris, with your type of tumour, it's likely that you would have died years ago. And I think I would. If I hadn't had that faith to sort of say, there is hope, I wouldn't have been. I was such a terrified person. I would have probably died of fear, or gone to a mental home, because I just couldn't cope.
Plus, you had a purpose, and those two things together maybe
exactly. That's right. Yeah, it's right. It's true. Yes.
And I think from hearing your story there, which you've told very eloquently, I've heard a lot of positives actually come out of that adversity. You did have your fair share of complications, and you had that relapse where you had to go back into hospital.
That's right. Yeah.
That second operation.
That's it. And only after I finished that chemo in 2010. It's stable. They don't call it remission now, they call it stable. And so I was stable for 6 months. Was it 6 months? No, it wasn't 6 months, it was less than that. 3 months. And then it was starting to go back again. So in April this year, I finished another 6 months of the same type of chemotherapy tablets, temozolomide, I think that's it, temozolomide, that I had first of all. And that again has put me in stabilised.
I'd like to thank you for coming in today and giving us the benefit of your extensive experience. I know it hasn't all been positive for you, but there's valuable lessons in there for everyone, I think. Both other patients watching it and clinicians who are watching it as well hopefully can learn some lessons from your account.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best for the future. I mean, obviously we don't know how things are going to go.
No,
hopefully things will go well for you.
I hope so.
And I wish your wife all the best too, because that was unexpected.
It was completely out of the blue, yes.
But I'm glad you've had periods where you've both been well together.
Yes.
I think that's very important.
She's retired now to look after me.
Yeah.
Great.
Take care.
Thank you.